Oh hi, I'm the Heretic. So imagine that you and your friends really wanted to commit genocide. A tall order, but you have the numbers, tools, and expertise that really nobody can stop you. Plus, you have time and privacy to come up with a truly cunning plan that ensures their total annihilation while minimizing your own casualties. So, what's your strategy for murdering everyone? Well, if you said your first move is to do recon on your targets, assessing their technological, psychological, economic, cultural, and organizational strengths and weaknesses to inform how you ought to subvert their population with your own resources most efficiently, slowly encircling them, such that by the time you reveal your true intentions it is already too late, then you are dead wrong! Clearly, what you should do is leave behind breadcrumbs of your advanced technology behind without your supervision, and then base your entire full frontal assault success on the completely baseless assumption that your victims do with your breadcrumbs exactly what you expect them to. This is where the Reapers find themselves. In the Mass Effect universe, and this video will be full of spoilers for those of you who wish to play the game and haven't yet, the Reapers are a race of ancient, technologically advanced biomechanical starships that every 50,000 years eradicate all spacefaring sapient species, and spacefaring specifically, from the galaxy. In order to facilitate this, they set up the Mass Relay Network, a series of massive nodes that can slingshot a ship to faster-than-light velocities to a receiver mass relay that safely slows them down. The purpose of the network being to facilitate development of spacefaring civilizations along the paths the Reapers can most easily dispatch, both in terms of the locations of their planets as well as the direction of their technological development. At the center of the mass relay network is the Citadel, a 5-armed space habitat that just sits in the Serpent Nebula, its network position guaranteeing that it becomes a site of strategic military and economic importance, such that any galactic government will want to put its political and/or military strength there. However, the Citadel is a trap, itself being a giant dormant mass relay that, when activated, brings the Reapers right into the center of the galactic capital in for a surprise decapitation strike. After depopulating the Citadel, the Reapers can loot their computers for all information relating to their settlements, technology, what have you, and begin the tedious, centuries-long process of galactic genocide by shooting every individual in the face. Once they're done, they go back into the intergalactic void of dark space and go back to vibin' until it's time to do it all again. Yay! Now, it's not a terrible plan conceptually, subtly directing your targets into doing things and making decisions that makes them easier to eliminate. Why would any interstellar civilization think the same civilization that built the FTL gateways would have made them just so their future users could be murdered? They wouldn't think so. More importantly, putting the head of their civilization in a point to be destroyed right out of the gate? Hell yeah, that's smart. But the Reapers have an even more terrifying tool, Indoctrination. Indoctrination is an energy field around Reapers themselves and some of their artifacts. How it works specifically is unclear, but its effects are to subvert the will of sapients that remain in proximity to them for prolonged periods of time, making them regard the Reapers with superstitious awe and consciously accept the Reapers' goals as their own. Over a prolonged period of time, a subject loses their free will and autonomy, becoming a mindless drone, an extension of the Reaper's will, which will eventually become a mindless vegetable. Agents that the Reapers want to maintain the autonomy of, they will often indoctrinate in more subtle ways, causing them to either falsely believe they have made common cause with them, as is the case with Sanitarius from the first Mass Effect game, or believe they are working against the Reapers even while doing their bidding, as was the case with the Elusive Man from Mass Effect 3. The effect is the same regardless. The individual increasingly becomes little more than a brainless puppet, a process that is, as far as has been seen, incurable. Even those consciously aware of their own indoctrination are powerless to reclaim their minds. But the applications of indoctrination are far greater than just creating antagonists for Commander Shepard. Indoctrinated can pose as refugees only to broadcast their hiding spots to the Reapers, or even subvert their defenses. Leaders can give their military stand-down orders, or conduct war on the Reapers' behalf. Indoctrinated soldiers can betray their units, give deliberately bad intel to their allies. It's a total mess. Aside from how artificial intelligences seem to be immune to indoctrination, as do a few very specific organic races under extremely specific circumstances like Arachnid Queens, there is no defense against indoctrination. If all else fails, the Reapers can rely on sheer brute force. Each individual Reaper is a huge capital ship, vastly technologically superior to anything that could otherwise exist in the galaxy that isn't itself, and each individual Reaper is capable of fighting entire fleets by itself. That's terrifying alone, but then remember that there are hundreds of them, possibly even thousands. That's not even counting the innumerable number of smaller classes of Reaper craft, like Reaper Destroyers or Oculuses. They aren't invincible, but I don't fancy those odds. With all of this, well, what hope does the galaxy have against such an implacable foe? Actually, pretty damn good. The Reaper strategy relies on numerous critical assumptions about how an interstellar civilization that are many times unreliable and are often so unbelievably completely wrong that I could not justify including intelligence as one of the Reaper's key strengths when listing their advantages. Well, that, and a stated reason for this race of sentient machines to be continuously committing galactic genocide against organics is to prevent sentient machines from committing galactic genocide against organics. As I said, intelligence, not one of their strengths. Anyways, the first flaw lies in the mass relay network. Namely, would a stellar civilization even use it? For one thing, faster-than-light travel is not dependent on the mass relays in the Mass Effect universe. Although slower than using them, any ship with an Element 0 drive, which is all of them, can do it. For those who don't know, Element 0 is a material in the Mass Effect universe that basically it allows magic to work. That's all you need to know. Magic, like faster-than-light travel. Anyways, its existence gives quite a bit of freedom in terms of travel. But because the mass relays are faster and quite useful, that means species will be tempted to use them, right? Sure, however, that doesn't mean every species, or even every individual within a species, will see a mass relay and come to the same conclusion about how to use it. Some will look at it and see a cool alien artifact to pick apart and reverse engineer. Some will see a source of nearly infinite energy, a gigantic railgun, or even a means of time travel. What's interesting is that due to how populated an interstellar civilization would be, all of those will be true simultaneously, as different schools of thought within an alien race might all pursue those goals. There is even possibility a particularly cautious civilization might see mass relays and think, whoa, that glowy thing looks dangerous, let's steer clear of those, or even, let's get rid of them. Generally, any species that develops spacefaring technology must be curious enough to want to know how chemistry, physics, and biology works. That they will only ever use the mass relays for their intended purpose is rather silly. Even if an entire civilization wants to do so and will actively discourage people from doing anything else, we all know that not everyone in any society will agree. Interplanetary civilizations can sustain populations in the trillions, quadrillions, or even greater. The most remote, fringe groups in a galactic civilization will still have millions of followers, plus a vast amount of resources at their disposal. They will have the means to explore using mass relays in unexpected ways, and will likely discover a way to use them that way. What this means is the very real possibility that the mass relay network would be subverted, and with the very real possibility of the network being undermined or even made obsolete, it has tremendous implications for the Reaper invasion. If their whole strategy relies on a civilization inhabiting systems at or close to mass relay systems, then when civilizations don't do these things, it makes their attempts a bit more complicated. If a civilization dismantled them, redirected them to point them in different directions, or even used them in unconventional ways, then the Reaper's very ability to navigate the galaxy is compromised, since they rely on the mass relays to be able to move freely throughout the galaxy. Sure, Reapers can move on FTL on their own, but as the Arrival DLC in Mass Effect 2 demonstrates, they're not particularly fast. As an example of unconventional uses of mass relays, well, Recall how mass relays work. Make thingy go fast. Anything can be an FTL projectile, and I mean anything. The Conduit, the Prothean-made mass relay from the first game, was able to launch an armored personnel carrier, something that ordinarily should never be going FTL. If you can attach thrusters to a mass relay, you have an omnidirectional, 9-mile-long railgun turret that can hit anything in the galaxy with an FTL projectile. And because real-time FTL communications exist, such a target could be hit from hundreds, even thousands of light years away with shocking accuracy. However, there is another complication from mass relays as well. There is not a mass relay in every star system. While a handful might contain mass relays, there are a lot that have none whatsoever. This becomes even more noteworthy when you remember there are hundreds of billions of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Now, what percent of them actually have planetary bodies orbiting them is unclear, but even if it's only 1%, I'm reasonably sure there's less than 1 billion mass relays. Sure, the Reapers only need to put relays on systems with worlds that could develop life, but those are rather ubiquitous in the Mass Effect universe. And if the Thresher Maws are any indication, what counts as a planet that's able to develop life is quite unclear. Their whole plan of getting civilizations to develop technology along their prescribed path and rely on mass relays falls apart pretty quickly. If a spacefaring civilization evolves and develops their own form of FTL far from any mass relays, something that's highly likely, well, they're not going to be able to find them. There's a very good chance. And perhaps even more importantly, their technological development will take on a more conventional route, insofar as Dyson Swarms and von Neumann probes are conventional. For those unaware, Dyson Swarms are a swarm of solar collection satellites that orbit a star to collect as close to 100% of its light as it can for use as energy. A von Neumann probe is a self-replicating spacefaring machine. When this hypothetical civilization did encounter mass relays, well, what use would they have for them? Having evolved in one of the hundreds of billions of star systems without a mass relay, they'll likely dismantle them to see how they work instead. And that's even assuming they find one in the first place, which is by no means a guarantee. There could be 1 million mass relays in the Milky Way galaxy, which means that one would be found in a star system 1 out of every hundreds of thousands times. In fact, it's mathematically more likely that multiple Reaper extinction cycles will occur before anyone in said hypothetical civilization is even able to interact with even one mass relay. As a result, there's a very high likelihood that such a civilization simply is never found by the Reapers. Even if such a civilization could not only find mass relays, but did use them for their intended use, that wouldn't stop a civilization from seeking to develop Dyson Swarms or von Neumann probes, which, well, I'll explain why Dyson Swarms are so important shortly. For right now, let's talk about the biggest flaw in the Reapers' plan, their decapitation strike. By wiping out the most politically, economically, and militarily important target in a civilization, one can leave it headless. Its remains now easy pickings. The idea being that a galactic government sets their government up on the Citadel, and when the Reapers come a-knockin', bam! Wiped out. Except the decapitation strike relies on galactic civilization centralizing their infrastructure in the Citadel, which is a really big what-if. We already established that the mass relay network will not be important to a galactic civilization in all likelihood, so why they would set up their capital on the space station at the heart of the network is unclear. They could use the Citadel for literally anything else. In fact, the Citadel is arguably the worst place to set your centralized command and control nodes. A civilization advanced enough to bridge the gap between stars, or at least advanced enough to make use of Element Zero to enable FTL at all, is advanced enough to begin construction of megastructures within their own solar system. Dyson Swarms will meet the energy needs of a Type 2 civilization for millennia to come, which, when sufficiently developed, will be more strategically valuable than the Citadel ever could be. Think about it. What resources does the Citadel actually produce? It's essentially just a big O'Neill cylinder, whose productivity is limited exclusively to the commerce of its inhabitants. Even that is limited to how much space is on the Citadel itself, which has a population in the tens of millions in the Mass Effect universe. A Dyson Swarm, by comparison, is composed of satellites that collect solar energy from a star, which can be used for any number of productive purposes, running computers, fueling energy to matter conversion, industry, agriculture, nature preserves, you name it. A swarm could have anywhere from 2 to quadrillions, or even quintillions of satellites, each of which could be a space habitat themselves, with a potential population of, well, let's just say that number has a lot of zeros. All this without ever having to leave your solar system. I'll let you decide which is more strategically important. A useless alien space station called the Citadel with a potential population in the hundreds of millions, or a Dyson Swarm with a potential population in the octillions, and the power of a star at your fingertips. All this assumes that such a society would be heavily centralized in the first place. As explained in my previous Doomed to Fail videos, governments are economic firms that do not scale well. One only need to look at Earth historically to show that governments struggle to control increasingly larger populations. Policing their behavior and regulating their use of resources requires exponentially huge bureaucracies relative to linear growth, making them ever more unstable as their scope becomes greater and greater. Escaping government coercion is so easy to do in space as well. Simply load up your spaceship with the tech you need to be self-sufficient, chart a course, and start zooming. Something that will actually come in handy against the Reapers, as you'll see very shortly. But before this civilization can even get to the stage where they're positioned just right to be wiped out by the Reapers plan to wipe out their infrastructure and leadership is doomed to fail. Without this decapitation strike, the galaxy might be able to mount a resistance against the Reapers. Sure, they might not necessarily win, but they can still make them bleed. This is especially true when you realize that the Reapers are actually von Neumann probes, but are just absolutely freaking terrible at it. At the end of a Reaper extinction cycle, they gather the biomass of the dominant species of that galaxy and use their genetic material to construct a new Reaper. One new Reaper. That means that if every cycle the Reapers lose 2 Reapers, they're screwed, in the long run anyway. But it gets even worse for them. If the galaxy has developed Dyson Swarms, then the Reapers are screwed. Like, at that point, there's literally no way for them to win. If a Dyson Swarm focused its solar collection satellites towards reflecting sunlight at a singular target, you have a Nikolai Dyson beam. What's a Nikolai Dyson beam? Well, it makes the Death Star look like a laser pointer. It focuses a star's energy into a single, powerful laser. More importantly, you don't need to stop firing it either. It's not like the sun can run out of ammo or overheat. And even if you don't want to go this route, conventional weapons and defenses on a Dyson Swarm would easily overwhelm the Reapers. While it's never been completely clear how many Reapers are in existence, estimates range from the hundreds to the tens of thousands of Sovereign-class Reapers with an indeterminate but greater number of Reaper destroyers. I sincerely doubt they have the numbers to match the quintillions of satellites of a single full Dyson Swarm. Sure, the Reapers could probably have a technological edge, but I'm reasonably sure a fully equipped and trained US Navy SEAL would not be able to win against 1 million Roman legionnaires. Even 1/2, 1/4, or 1/100th of a Dyson Swarm would be more than sufficient to wipe out the Reapers in their entirety without much effort. A Kardashev 2 civilization, a civilization that has harnessed the power of a star, is more than sufficient to defeat the Reapers, and the technology and resources needed to reach that level are well within a civilization's home star system. Even if the Dyson Swarm wasn't complete enough to threaten the Reapers, their goal isn't just to militarily crush galactic civilization, but genocide, a rather daunting task if one considers everything I said already, even assuming everything was somehow going exactly to the Reaper's plan. FTL communication exists in the Mass Effect universe. People everywhere are going to know about the Reaper attacks. The thing about surprise attacks is that you can only surprise your target once, and not wanting to get wiped out themselves, it creates a strong incentive for people to flee for uncharted systems or even uncharted galaxies. Hell, Mass Effect Andromeda is built on this exact premise. Yes, the Reapers can hijack communications to know where inhabited systems are, but millions of parties will be fleeing, many of them off the books, for uncharted space to hide from the Reapers. Sure, they won't always be able to succeed, since the Reapers can embed indoctrinated agents to betray the fleeing parties, but the probability that they will be able to do this 100% of the time, across millions of possible instances, is ridiculous. To make matters worse, for the Reapers, huge sections of the galaxy are completely unexplored. I'm not even referring to the 99.999+% of star systems that lack mass relays. I mean the terminus systems, a region of the galaxy with active mass relays that no galactic government claims jurisdiction over. Ignoring the impossibility of the existence of government in a spacefaring civilization for just a moment, part of the Reapers' invasion strategy relies on them knowing where the various colonies and settlements of the sapient races are, and the terminus systems represent an entire region of the galaxy that's a massive black spot in data collection. Sure, they may have some information about colonies, even homeworlds, but as in-universe, the region is filled to the brim with generally counter-economists, the probability of centers of industry, structures, colonies, or other settlements that galactic civilization would know nothing about is near certain. Even more interestingly, given that the Reapers set up the galaxy specifically so galactic civilization flourishes in largely the same way and repeats the same cycles over and over again, that means every single cycle has its own set of terminus systems. For some reason, having a huge section of the galaxy given over to the counter-economists helps them in some way. I'm not entirely sure how. Meaning, not only are there easily thousands of settlements that could slip under the Reapers' radar because they don't know they exist, but there could be thousands of such settlements that accumulate every cycle, making it very easy for some precursor race to physically inform the inhabitants of the next cycle about the Reapers, what they are like, and how to prepare. Or hell, even some settlements that have been isolated for so long, they have no idea they're the last of their species. How the hell did nobody but a handful of guys in cryosleep slip past the Reapers' extinction radar? I get that the Reapers are thorough, spending centuries to complete their genocide, but this level of hyper-competence is just unbelievable. I guess it's just convenient to the plot, like with the Crucible. Apparently, galactic civilization can't keep more than a handful of idiots alive, but they can pass down schematics to the Crucible while forgetting to tell them what the Crucible is for, what it does, or how it works. Then again, the whole of Mass Effect 3's writing is just a mess, so take what you can get. By the time of the events of the Mass Effect games, the galaxy ought to be teeming with life, filled to the brim with survivors of previous cycles, as well as other civilizations who are not only aware of the Reapers, having heard firsthand from the survivors, but have been strategizing for a long time how to wipe them out for good. Since the technology to destroy them is easily available to any civilization, the Reapers aren't really that much of a threat at all. The only time they could be is if a civilization did the impossible and had a centralized, spacefaring authoritarian state. Since all civilizations have an infinite demand for energy and resources, and a Dyson Swarm is a technology an alien civilization would reasonably conceive of and develop to fulfill this demand, the Reapers' whole strategy relies on civilizations doing something that is not only economically impossible, that is to say having a state, but actively working against their economic interests. Let me wargame a more likely scenario for what a Reaper invasion would be like. So, the Reapers activate the Citadel and emerge with their full invasion force, ready to wipe out everyone on the Citadel. The first thing they do is knock out the comm buoys and lock down the mass relays out from the system to prevent anyone from escaping. Then, the Reapers begin to exterminate everyone on the Citadel, only to find that there's not a lot of people here. Yeah, there are ships and the station is inhabited, but only a couple 100,000. Weird, but easily wiped out. The Reapers have no problem hijacking their computers and find that the station was not the seat of galactic government as they anticipated, but a shipbuilding factory. It wasn't even the firm's headquarters. What gives? Well, the Citadel has been completely depopulated after several days of systematically hunting down everyone trying to hide. Now, on to the rest of the galaxy. The information on the computers gives a pretty good map of the galaxy, showcasing civilization is clustered in and around individual mass relays. Well, this is good. This is exactly what they hoped. Why they didn't use the Citadel as a central hub of their empire forces the Reapers to have to improvise. Fortunately, they're smart. They use their super tech equipment to detect anomalies in the galaxy and find that several stars, particularly around the inhabited systems, are dim. Very dim, in fact. Odd. But given that their decapitation strike was not as effective as they would have hoped, they opt for a different tactic. They use the tech stolen from the Citadel to get into intergalactic communications to make some observations. As it turns out, just about everyone in their victim civilization seems to be freaking out about the attack. Apparently, there was a crap ton of videos about their invasion that got leaked and now, well, the element of surprise is gone. How? The Reapers knocked out the comm buoys until they realized there were many directly on the Citadel itself that were missed long enough for footage to get leaked. But the Reapers are smart and they can actually capitalize on this. They open up several accounts on several of the websites and make themselves known. They announce themselves, who they are, their existence, however they obfuscate their true intent, communicating a desire for peace while fabricating some plausible justification for wiping out the population of the Citadel. Their demands are for a conditional surrender to be negotiated for by the political leaders of the civilization who will arrive on the Citadel with as many ships as they'd like. Their cunning plan is to indoctrinate them and have them basically give their civilization over to be harvested by the Reapers. They're smart, you see. But instead, the Reapers are inundated with vitriol, mockery, and laughter. There is no response from anyone that might be considered a leader, and there's also multiple people all pretending to be Reapers, also making similar demands, except usually asking for other things like money, wealth, or more esoteric goods, like love, views, or bitches. However, the Reapers discover something very important. There's no centralized infrastructure at all. These guys should be easy to pick off one by one just right off the bat. So, let's figure out just what these organics are capable of, decapitate their strongholds, and then everything should be easier to wipe out. So, let's vector 100 or so Reapers to jump into a mass relay. They will arrive in the system in 3, 2, 1... What is that? Within seconds, the entire Reaper fleet is completely wiped out. It takes the combined efforts of an entire organic fleet to be able to fight off a single Reaper, but they just destroyed 100 in seconds. The Reapers actually figure out why rather quickly, as the organics are celebrating the victory, broadcasting live streams of the Reaper fleet being enveloped by a gigantic beam of light, fired from what they call a Nikolai Dyson beam. Evidently, this cycle had taken on a different technological path, which has allowed them to literally weaponize the stars themselves. Knowing this, the Reapers realize they'll have to take a more careful approach. Maybe they could 13 more Reapers just get destroyed. What? Looking on the networks, they see the organics have weaponized a mass relay and are using it to take potshots at the Reaper fleet from within the Serpent Nebula. It's not even a military, it's just some celebrity who's doing it for fun. He keeps firing, and although he doesn't always hit, there's still no way to retaliate, as without the mass relay being in the correct position, they can't jump to the system. It will take months to reach that guy. Suddenly, he stops firing. Then he announces that the retaliatory fleet will be arriving to take care of the Reapers, and he doesn't want to cause any friendly fire incidents. He then speaks to the Reapers directly, and he starts counting down. 3, 2, 1. Ships arrive around the Citadel. That was fast. And normally, the galaxy isn't able to unite against the Reapers. Fortunately, there's only 100 or so ships, then a few hundred more, then a few thousand more, then a few million more, and they just keep coming. Jesus, that's a lot of ships. Shortly afterwards, the galaxy continues on like nothing had happened. The Reaper invasion, a galactic apocalypse event to any civilization dumb enough to follow the Reaper's prescribed path of social, political, economic, and technological development, was little more than a footnote in galactic history. Certainly, it's tragic for those who lost friends and family in the initial surprise attack, but life goes on. If the Reapers had constructed their plan around the assumption that societies and civilizations are emergent properties of social cooperation, and not hegemonic entities prescribed from the top down, maybe they might have had a chance. It's certainly an interesting solution to the Fermi paradox. The question of, if intelligent life is incentivized to travel to stars, then where are all the aliens? Well, they keep getting wiped out by the Reapers. Trouble is, unless Reapers have amazing timing of being able to wipe out a civilization after they reach Type 1, but before they can make any progress on reaching Type 2, a window of opportunity only a few decades wide, this isn't going to be happening anytime soon. There is also the other factor to consider, and that is why the Reapers wipe out galactic civilizations in the first place. According to the synthesis ending, there is another way to defeat the Reapers without killing them. Well, defeat in the sense that they don't screw with you anymore. Basically, in the synthesis ending, organic biology merges with technology, making the two indistinguishable. In my opinion, it's the best ending of all 5 options, but it also raises an important question. Why didn't anyone try that before? It's not like it's the most complex or esoteric thing in the universe to do. DNA is basically just a base 4 programming language. All you really need to do is replace your cells with nanites and you're golden. It's not like cybernetics or techno-organic merging has no precedence in the Mass Effect lore either. The so-called virtual aliens escape the destruction of their homeworld by uploading their minds to cyberspace aboard a spaceship. The Jatil from the Prothean cycle actually merge their minds with AIs, although the Reapers wipe them out anyway, and the Reapers themselves are techno-organic hybrids. Saren Arterius, for the first game, literally has a Geth arm, and nobody seems to be bothered by this. I know at this point, I'm not really explaining why the Reapers are not a threat that could be defeated very easily, and just ripping open Mass Effect's plot holes, but yeah, the more I think about it, the more I realize the Reapers, they suck. Questions, comments, critique? Are you excited to pirate Mass Effect Legendary Edition? Should writers stop trying to write antagonists inspired by Lovecraftian horror already? Leave a comment below. Like, share, and subscribe to become a heretic today.